There is a particular kind of weight that does not come from what you choose, but from what you inherit. Words you did not coin, but must still carry. Names you did not earn, but must still answer to. Expectations that arrive already formed, already heavy, already waiting. Some people speak because they have something to share. Others speak because their office requires it. And in Tolkien's world, few voices are more shaped by inherited weight than the voice of Gondor. Welcome to the Greyhaven's Hour, a place for listening rather than haste, for reflection rather than argument, where we turn to Tolkien's world, not to master it, but to sit with it for a while and hear what it still has to say. Today, we continue our longer listening, a journey through the voices that carry Middle-earth when power fails. Rohan remembers aloud. Its songs rise on the wind, shared by riders who carry grief together. But Gondor remembers differently. Its memory is written on stone and record. Its words are shaped by ceremonies, lineages, and the long shadow of what once was. And at the heart of Gondor stands a sentence that sounds simple, but carries an entire history of absence. We are stewards, not kings. Say it slowly, and you can hear what it contains. It is humility, and it is grief. It is discipline, and it is longing. It is devotion, and it is loss. Because a steward speaks with the weight of kingship, but without its freedom. The steward must preserve what he cannot complete. He must hold a throne that is not his. He must keep a realm alive in the long waiting between what was and what may never return. Gondor's voice, therefore, is not primarily the voice of hope. It is the voice of custody. It speaks to prevent collapse. It speaks to keep continuity intact. It speaks so that the past does not vanish into forgetfulness. And yet, there is a cost to a voice that speaks always from duty. When words become obligation, they can lose warmth. When language becomes office, it can create distance. Titles multiply, protocols harden, speech rises into formality, not always out of pride, but because formality is how a weary people preserve dignity when everything else is fraying. Gondor's words often sound elevated, and they are, but elevation can become separation, and that is where Denethor enters. Denethor is too often reduced to a single note: madness, bitterness, failure. But Tolkien does not write him that way. Denethor is a man shaped by words. He is learned, articulate, disciplined. He speaks like a steward should speak, with precision, with control, with the awareness that each phrase must hold the weight of a crumbling world. Denethor understands his role as vigilance, holding the line, guarding the past, preventing a final break. And because he believes collapse is always near, his language becomes defensive. Not theatrical, not sentimental, defensive. At first, that defensiveness can look like strength, but over time, something narrows. His words lose warmth. He speaks at others rather than with them. A dialogue becomes proclamation, and proclamation becomes accusation. The stewardship that was meant to be held in trust begins to feel like territory. Words become possession, titles become armour, memory becomes a fortress. And behind that fortress is a fear Denethor will not name. Not simply fear of defeat, but fear of meaninglessness. Because if Gondor falls, then what were all the years of holding? If the line breaks, then what was the purpose of the long, faithful endurance? That is why Denethor reaches for knowledge with such hunger. He believes that seeing more will protect more, and so vision replaces trust. What should have become counsel becomes surveillance. What should have become wisdom becomes fear. And the tragedy is this: Denethor begins to confuse bearing the burden alone with faithfulness. He isolates himself, not because he does not love Gondor, but because he believes love must be proven by solitary endurance. Silence in him is mistaken for strength, but it is entrapment. He does not merely lose hope. He comes to believe that duty forbids hope. And when duty forbids hope, language hardens. It can no longer bless. It can only defend. And eventually, it can only wound. When words are held to keep the world from breaking, they may break the speaker instead. This is Denethor's tragedy. Not villainy, tragedy. Because there is a voice Gondor is always meant to reach. A voice that does not cling to inherited words like a final possession, but lays them down when their purpose is fulfilled. And that voice is Aragorn. Aragorn is marked by a long and patient restraint. He carries many names, but does not insist on any. He has lineage enough to justify claim, but he does not weaponize it. He does not announce himself as king. He waits. This is not indecision, this is integrity. Because Aragorn understands that titles taken too early corrupt the soul. So he refuses to claim inherited words before the world is ready to hear them rightly. His speech is measured. When he speaks of who he is, it is not to elevate himself, but to serve others. His words remain rational, not positional. And the contrast with Denethor becomes clear without being cruel. Both men carry ancient names. Both stand under the long shadow of kingship. But one hoards memory because it is all he has left. The other releases memory because he trusts what it points towards. Denethor clings, Aragorn relinquishes. And this is where kingship becomes, in Tolkien's world, not merely authority, but liberation. When Aragorn finally accepts the crown, his language becomes freer, not harder. The king does not need to guard words like a fortress. He can afford gentleness. He can afford mercy. He can afford to speak, not only to preserve the past, but to heal the present. His defining posture is not yet, a refusal to grasp. And it is precisely this restraint that makes his eventual acceptance clean. Because in Tolkien's world, true authority does not seize, it is received. And when it is received rightly, a strange thing happens. Words that had become weight become gift again. Speech that had hardened into office softens into relationship. Memory, held for generations like a burden, is finally permitted to rest. This is what the anchor quote means in its simplest sense. We are stewards, not kings. It is not merely an admission of limitation, it is a confession that stewardship was always meant to end. Not in failure, in fulfillment. Stewardship is not abolished when the king returns. It is completed. And so the voice of Gondor, at its best, is not the voice of endless holding. It is the voice that knows when to lay down what it carried. And that is what Denethor could not do. Not because he was weak, but because he was wounded. He could not imagine that laying down the burden was faithfulness rather than betrayal. He could not imagine that trust might be stronger than vigilance. And so his words collapsed inward, until speech no longer connected him to people, only to fear. But Aragorn shows the other way, that duty can be fulfilled without becoming possession, that memory can be honoured without being hoarded, that authority can be held without hardening the heart. And yet, even here, Tolkien does not let us end in grandeur, because once words become too formal, too weighted by office and history, truth finds quieter mouths. When the great halls echo with titles and ceremonies, when the language of a realm becomes too heavy to speak freely, the world begins to be saved again in smaller rooms, by smaller voices, by ordinary speech. If this reflection stayed with you, there are other voices still waiting to be heard. Some voices rise in song, others are shaped by duty. And when words grow heavy with office, truth often returns through the small and the plain. In the next episode, we listen to the hobbits and the voice of the ordinary. If these quiet journeys have given you something to carry, please subscribe, like and share. It helps them reach others who are still listening. Until next time, may your duty be faithful, may your words remain gentle, and may you know when to hold the line and when to lay the burden down.